It's getting late in the day on July 2nd, and General Hancock comes riding down this part of the Union battle line, and he looks off in the distance, beyond where you see the small bushes, and sees aiming for a gap in the line, because that's what on-echelon attacks do. That's what Longstreet is doing here. That's going to open up some gaps as reinforcements are sent to different areas. This would have been the area where Caldwell's 2nd Corps Division would have been. And he looks off in the distance and he sees 4 or 5 flags, Confederate, aiming for this gap. And what it is Wilcox's Alabama Brigade. So he approaches the colonel here, whose men were basically resting, and he says to the colonel, "What regiment is this?" "1st Minnesota, sir," says William Colville. Hancock says, "You see those flags? Take them." He's just sent 262 men against 1,400 to 1,500 Alabamans. They all know it's a suicide mission. But what Hancock is trying to do is to buy 15 minutes or so of time to bring additional reinforcements into this particular area. He will write later, although not everybody believes him, that it was the crisis of the engagement. Sometimes people write more importantly about things that pertain to themselves.
Yeah.
The 262 men who were here in the 1st Minnesota, they had a couple of other companies that were someplace else, will pick up their rifles, as you see this fellow doing here. Some of them didn't even have time to load, and they'll run in the direction that the guy is running and collide with Wilcox's Alabamans in what is known as the Plum Run Swale. In 15 minutes, 82% of these men become casualties. But what Hancock has done is to buy that 15 minutes of time. He will later write, Hancock will, that he would have sent every man to his death knowing it would have happened because he had to have that time to fill in this gap. William Colville, later, I think the latter part of his life, he was wounded here pretty severely. He always walked with a limp, but he survived. He lived in Red Wing, Minnesota. You might know better where that is.
Pastor's from.
And a statue was put up to him in a nearby community in the early 1920s. 20,000 people showed up for the dedication of the statue, including President Calvin Coolidge.
Wow.
And this isn't Colville here, but he was a rather tall guy. He was a lawyer, rather regal in his look, and he was 6'5" tall.
Wow.
And he led the 1st Minnesota here.
Well, do you suppose, it seems kind of unlikely that this Jefferson would be one of 20%. Would his
He
name
might
be
not have
up
even
there?
fought here, though.
Well,
first
was he at Gettysburg? That I don't know.
Well, they were at Gettysburg. Was
the
the
unit was.
He could have been sent to that unit after or before.
Did you want to get out here and take a couple of photos? There's a couple of plaques on the other side here.